Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Van Helsing. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously the group is trying to decide, what they're going to do. Because it's so interesting because obviously you can see, things have kind of got Julius a little on edge because for him it's like he's looking at Jack and Violet as like they're kids, man, because he already sees like the heaviness that was put on Vanessa, but it's like these are kids, like the fate of everything is on them. But Axel reminds him, it's like, well, they are Vanessa's kids, and the fact of the matter is they're going to be steadfast just like Vanessa and Scarlet were, give it everything they got to the very end, but it is kind of once again I always like storylines like that in a sense because it kind of reminds me of like Avatar: The Last Airbender. We actually think about it just like, man, literally the weight of the world was on Aang's shoulders. It's kind of the same thing in this regard. So I just think that's kind of fascinating, especially because for so long they thought like, oh, we're just regular kids, and in mere moments their entire lives got turned upside down. They find out who their mom is. They find out they're Van Helsing. They find out their life with their dad was a lie. They find out who he is. They find out that they were experiments. Like, it's so much to kind of unpackage. So there's a lot to kind of deal with in that, but also they're deciding what to do because Jack is like, we got to go save Dad, which Violet's like, no, like he's one of them. But for her, it's like Jack is like, Dad literally gave you the clues to find those pages. He is like, the fact is, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have gotten away either. So they split up. Obviously, like everyone's going forward to Violet, Julius and Axel going to get the pages, while Ivory and Jack are going to try and save Hanson / Willem, which I won't lie to you, the entire episode I'm so giddy because it's like, oh my god, Ivory's one of the good guys now. That still makes me giddy. I'm like, holy crap, that's so cool. I love it, dude. Which will really quickly jump to Ivory and Jack's side of things. I love that, dude. I love it that Michaela is appointing a new Ivory because it's like, oh, you're Mira, you're going to be the new Ivory because your sister's fallen or whatever. And so they end up performing a ritual on her, which that's such a dope ritual. This is the first instance of us ever hearing about that. But she's like, Ivory explained that it's a ritual to remove your heart so it can't be staked. I'm like, that's so interesting. One, staking vampires doesn't come up that often in this universe, but I guess it's something that they've done for so long because like old-fashioned, Van Helsing's had to probably do that in the past when like obviously they didn't have the weaponry that modern day Vanessa, Jack, and Violet could all have access to, like, because I think that's the thing of like probably like why machine guns work, like guns in general, probably because like the whole thing is like destroy a vampire's heart. Well, most bullets probably inadvertently end up destroying their hearts when you just end up riddling them with bullets. At one point, one of your bullets is bound to like, I guess, just like puncture and destroy their heart. There's no recovering for it. So I guess that's kind of one way, because I guess it also makes it harder because like otherwise you'd have to go for the head, and that's not always the easiest thing to go for. So but that was interesting. But like Jack turning one of the sisters, and then she plays the role of like waiting for the ritual to be done, and bam bam bam, it all goes down. I'm like, dude, I got so giddy. I especially liked it because we got a little insight because Ivory was like, I'm pissed at you for what you did to me and my sisters. Because we got insight into Ivory's past a little bit in season 2 because she was being burned at the stake and whatnot. And it's like, it seems like Michaela's the one who, I mean, hence why she's part of the sisterhood. It's that Michaela ended up saving her, and all of it's like what you made us into, I think is, I mean, it might even be the fact of the matter is that Michaela did more than just like, it's like not just what you made us become, but what you actually did to us too. This was kind of a personal battle for her, but luckily, they were able to stop Michaela, and I do appreciate, like, obviously Jack stabbed her heart, but I love that Ivory was the one that lopped off her head. I'm like, dude, I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting you to go down in this way, but it's like one bride down, technically 2 more to go. Technically 1 because, Balthury's kind of on her own, and, Willem's not on their side anymore, but still, I was like, that's so good. And then I see like Jack there with like 5 of them. I'm like, there's 4 of them in front of her, but me and my brain was like, whoa, is this supposed to be kind of full circle for Jack? Who, remember, she lost her 4 friends. I mean, obviously Ivory's there making it 5, but part of me is wondering, is that what that's supposed to represent? Is that supposed to like represent almost like the squad she lost in Apocalypse, as we got an entire episode dedicated to her and her loss? So I'm wondering on some level, is that what that's supposed to represent? Because it's so interesting too, because it's like the sisterhood now serves the Van Helsing. It's like, oh my god, you got your own little army. I'm like, that's so dope. And and it's like Ivory is like, I owe you so much, and Jack is like, you don't owe us anything, because like for Ivory it's like, you saved us, you saved me, so I'm going to stick by your side, which is so, I mean, it's symbolic, because the same thing happened to Julius, maybe there's that like siring type of bond between the Van Helsings and those they save. Obviously there was that connection, but whether it's like that loyalty is garnished like that, I don't think it is. It's just, I mean, because obviously Axel's loyalty to like Vanessa kind of stemmed before he became a vampire. Maybe it just amplifies, but obviously that turned into a complicated thing because of the whole Scarlet thing. But regardless, I think it's just, it's like, you freed me, and I, because everyone's kind of got that feeling like, oh my god, you're our savior. So obviously even the people Vanessa had saved earlier this season were like, oh my god, let us follow you, let's help you. So it's that type of situation. So I just say that's kind of fascinating in a sense. But like I said, it's similar to how Julius followed Vanessa all around in season 2 after she had turned him, so. But okay, so there's that. Then the other side of things is like, okay, they're piecing it together. Like Axel, Violet. I keep doing it. Axel, Violet, and Julius are looking in, and it's like they're at Fort Collins. It's like, all right, these aren't like black tech soldiers or whatever. These are like special forces and everything. So it's like, okay, and that was another conversation earlier too. It's like Home Dude last episode might not have been BSing. There might be some truth to the fact is that there is still some section of the U.S. still, around and stuff like that. And so it's like, okay. So lo and behold, he was able to sneak them in. I love that, like by bringing in all that smelly crap and stuff. It's like, yeah, I was wondering how you're going to cover up Violet and Julius being there, but obviously they kind of split up a little bit. Axel kind of pretending like he's turning in Julius, and Julius in the beginning shot. I'm like, I still love that they play with that element so much, because like no one's aware of what you can do. So it's like, yeah, when people drop dead, it's like, oh. I was almost surprised too, because I mean, I guess the U.S. government wouldn't necessarily know that Julius was a vampire, and even if they did, they don't know the full scope of it. I mean, and that's an actually powerful thing in this episode. We learned that the U.S., whatever chunk is left with the president and whatever her cabinet is, like, I mean, rather whoever her cabinet is, no one connected to the government is aware fully of what's going down, because they probably heard the whispers people brought up about like, oh, Vanessa, she can cure vampirism and stuff like that. They knew that she was special, because when Axel meets the Colonel, it's like, yeah, because the Colonel hadn't run his stuff, and it was like, okay, so you were sent to a hospital on orders and stuff like that. It's like, and then Axel says something that's interesting. He's like, you knew who she was before we did. And it's like, yeah, because that is the thing of like, because remember, the government shut that down quickly, because no one knew at the time, like, why are we looking after this like lady that's supposedly dead? Like, because they knew she was special. So we know that the Van Helsings have had ties to the government, just because black tech is, I guess, kind of like maybe like business that worked closely with the government. So like, obviously we know Abby worked with them. Obviously we know they've had ties to vampires, but that's why I was kind of like thinking, like, because it seemed like black tech was kind of potentially its own thing, but now as the picture's grown, it kind of seems like black tech was connected a lot more to the government. So because it seems like that's who Avery was necessarily responding to, because I thought she was talking specifically to like maybe some black tech higher ups, but it's like, no, higher ups in the food chain. It's in this particular case being the government and stuff like that. I was like, that's potentially interesting, like what that all meant, because when the Colonel shows up and he's talking to quote unquote Avery, when it's actually Bathory in disguise, I thought that was interesting. Of like, okay, so you were sending reports to us about, Hanson and what was going on here. So they know they wanted Violet, but I guess they didn't really 100% know. They just knew that maybe they did know, because of black tech and everything, he ended up telling them about how important Violet was, and maybe that she was Vanessa's kid or something like that, or at least made from her DNA and stuff like that. So I'm not sure what they're trying to really 100% make of that. Side note, I should also point out, the actor who plays the Colonel, I don't know the actor's name, but I've seen him stuff from time to time. Another vampire-related thing he was in, if I'm not mistaken, that's the same actor who played the sheriff in Hemlock Grove, specifically season 1. Which, like I said, it's a pseudo-vampire thing because it's a supernatural show and there are vampires in there, rather, umpirs. So I just thought that, I was like, oh, that's a neat little connection in that regard. But once again, I'm going on a bit of a tangent. Which is actually interesting when you run that connection even deeper, because on Syfy there was another show called Ghost Wars, and one of his fellow co-stars in Hemlock Grove, her character's name was Clementine. She was also on the Syfy show, which is interesting because I forgot what show it was. Is it Battlestar Galactica? It's some science fictional show that they're both actually from the same show. I didn't know that at the time of me watching Hemlock Grove, but they're actually they were part of the same show. I just don't remember what show it was. It was a science fictional show. I want to say maybe Battlestar Galactica, but I could be 100% wrong. Regardless, I'm once again going on a big tangent about nothing, but still. And what's interesting too is that Julius ended up looking into some files because he was trying to find out where Doc got sent. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I was like, because I literally brought that up last episode. Yeah, we still have no idea where Doc is. And I think he ends up looking up something that's like Sunshine Unit, which I'm immediately going like, there's a part of me that wonders, is that, because I'm about to say, is that referencing that facility? Because obviously, like, I was immediately thinking of like where Scarlett and Vanessa grew up in that blackjack facility, but I was like, no, that's something else. But then I was like, it must be representing Sunshine Unit, as in this unit of like, oh, where the clouds are, not as thick and vampires can't really reign as supreme. Well, obviously the whole cloud thing doesn't matter anymore because, most of or at least a good chunk of the vampires, at least by now, are all daywalkers. So, but the fact of the matter is, it makes sense that Hansen probably sent Doc to the U.S. government, because it's like Doc is literally the most. What is the word I'm looking for? Well versed in this whole vampire thing. So Hansen not necessarily being the bad guy that he is looking after his children and everything like that. It makes you wonder, like, before, Bathory, Sam, and Michaela had showed up, he probably already had it in his mind of like he wasn't going to betray Violet and all of that, So I wonder, was it a last minute decision, or had he already been thinking about it? Like even his hesitation about the look on his face when he was saying, like, let them in, like, a couple episodes back, just made me think, like, okay, it's definitely a thing of he didn't want things to kind of play out the way they did. He was almost probably, like, there was a part of him that knew this day was coming, but probably was hoping it would never come. But that's why he was also training Violet to prepare her for when this came. So that's why I'm kind of wondering, was sending Doc to them supposed to be either something to get them off his back for a little while, or is it because he's like, Doc is going to be important to fixing all this? So I think that's what that's supposed to represent. So I guess she hasn't filled them in on about everything, maybe, potentially. I don't know. But it is kind of crazy to think that despite all that, they are the most in the dark. I mean, to be fair, what's going down with the Dark One and everything, it is such a niche thing. Only like our main group of characters are aware of what's really, really going down behind the scenes beyond just this like vampire apocalypse. Because it seemed like the president and, like I said, everyone she's associated with seemed like they just think that is still apocalypse thing is still happening. But like obviously there's much more groundwork. I mean, hell, the reason why they probably know at least as much as they potentially do is probably because they probably did ask Doc about stuff, and it's like, whoa, wait, what's this? Where'd you get these pictures? That type of situation. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see in that regard. But it is interesting to see Willem's, devotion to his kids, because he's like, despite everything, he's fighting back against, Michaela at the time and Bathory, because it's like he wants to protect his kids, because once again, he at one point in time betrayed everything that he cared about and stood for, and he's not going to let that happen to his children, because in this particular case, the quote unquote monster gained a heart. I mean, to be fair, his heart was kind of darkened. I mean, that's like anyone. I wonder, could you even cure Bathory or Michaela? I mean, it might be the thing of kind of like, yeah, we're not going to bother even trying, but I think you probably could. It probably would not be the easiest thing, just because, I mean, yeah, because it doesn't matter how old you are, because obviously look at, well, actually it does, because it's like the elder was like, he bit Vanessa, but it didn't change him back. So I guess like depending on how old and ancient you are, like something like that's not going to affect you. So I don't know, that was just kind of like bouncing in the back of my mind. And do you had that moment Axel's talking to the colonel and everything, and I was like, oh, are you actually going to tell him everything? I figured he was going to tell him some stuff while he's trying to escape and everything, but then it's like, all right, did you find, so where do we go from here and stuff like that? And it's like, well, the fact of the matter is we're going to need your help to get out. So, like, do you really want to know what's going on here? And then they're like, wait, that's Hanson. He's like, wait, that's Hanson. It's like, yeah, they can make themselves look like other people. Yeah, like, who's the Oracle and all that? Yeah, that's the lady pretending to be Avery. And I love Axel being like, how deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go? It's like, yeah. It's like, yeah. We've been along this ride picking up this information for the past 4 seasons. It's kind of crazy when you actually think of like, oh yeah, there's going to be people who are going to get big information dumps going forward, or being like, going to be on the side of like, wait, this is what's going on here. Like, this whole thing is much more than you think it is. So it's going to be interesting, because I think next episode they'll end up informing the colonel about what's going down, but also they'll get a lot more insight into what this whole thing is. We'll probably get some insight in the sense of like, okay, like maybe you'll get a look at some of the protocols that went down like the moment all this was going to happen. Like, it makes you wonder, like, who set this all stuff in motion? Like, how, I mean, I guess it's like maybe the government already has like some like, well, because it kind of reminds me of the show Revolution. I recently came across that. I was like flipping through like Amazon Prime, and I saw that kind of like pop up as a recommendation, which great show that was very short-lived. It kind of had a post-apocalyptic situation, kind of similar, not very different post-apocalyptic, but just kind of like, world kind of changed forever because something happened. I'm not going to go into the tangent right now, but there was some like groundwork laid ahead of time government wise. So I think the same thing kind of applies in this case. I'm wondering, just like, was it just natural protocols that kicked it? And it's just like, oh, it just happens to be a vampire apocalypse, or is there something more to it? Especially considering the fact is Black Tech's connection to this whole vampire thing. Like, once again, because it seems, like I said, it seems like my understanding just made it seem like Black Tech was a government-funded organization. Now that we know that the government still exists, which that's obviously an interesting thing too, because obviously like the president and stuff is alive here, but it's like, what does that mean worldwide? Because we've gone outside of the U.S., but that was in the past. Wasn't it in Shanghai? Vanessa went when she went dealing with the Ba when she became Lily back in the past. Like, I think, like, that's our only instance of ever going outside of the U.S. to my knowledge. So we still don't know what the state of the world is, and that might not be something they ever tackle. It's like, probably because it's like covering things on a global scale is probably harder to do. Like, at the very least, if you at least deal on a country level, it's a little easier, but it's like, who knows what, like I said, the outside world kind of looks like in that regard. So I'm very interested to kind of dive into all of that. And also, like, obviously Jack and Violet, it's like, oh, they're seeing their dad in his real form now, and it's like, now it's kind of like, well, he's messed up because of all that Valtteri put him through, but the question is, like, can he recover from it? Is it permanent damage? And he said, he told, and I think that's going to be something we get to see, because he's like, because obviously it was Valtteri in his head pretending to be Jack, but it's, I mean, Violet, jeez, I keep doing that. He wanted to tell them the truth. He's like, I'm going to tell you the truth the moment that I, came to love you guys. Because obviously that isn't where this started. When he made them, it's like, yeah, you're going to be tools to bring back my loved one, that being the Dark One. But now it's like, at some point something did happen that shifted, where he cared so much about his daughters that he can't and isn't willing to sacrifice any one of them. His love is what kind of gave him strength, through it all. So I'm interested to kind of dive into that. But also, it seems like this is all part of Bathory's plan, because for her it's like stillness. It's because, well, one thorn has been removed by her side, from her side by mice. As she kind of references Michaela's death, because it's like, well, it kind of worked out for her. She's the one that kind of wanted her, their loved one, the Dark One, all to themselves, and so she wanted her all to herself. So now it's like she kind of has that, because, well, Willem's no longer on the team. But I think that's going to be, because eventually that confrontation is going to happen. I'm very interested to see what ends up happening when Dracula and Willem cross paths again after all these years, especially him not being on her side anymore. But yeah, I mean, that's obviously one step closer now that they have the pages, and that's just going to be interesting to see, what this is going to be, potentially trying to kill the Dark One. I just already have the feeling it's not going to work out. Like, obviously, Bathory's going to play a role in stopping that. But I think when it's all said and done, Bathory's not going to survive this. Question is Dracula just going to kill her when she gets a chance, or is it just going to be someone else? I think it'd be symbolic if it was Willem, but, ultimately we'll see. Especially because she's the one that made Willem into what he was, made him betray Abraham and not Abraham, but Jacob and everything he cared about, so... I'm also curious to see where we get insight into everything that Vanessa's going through, like when she went through the portal with the Dark One, like will we ever get to see like what she's experiencing right now? Like I don't know. We'll ultimately, like I said, have to wait and see. But I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good